I DM myself, so I am fully aware of how annoying we players can be. But no matter how hard I try to take the game seriously, I just always end up making a completely insane or weird character. I might sometimes be that guy, but I really don't care. I just love making interesting or weird characters so much. The character in question this time was in a game of Call of Cthulhu. The game was run by the tabletop gaming club at my university. I was unsure about joining at first, but my best friend here convinced me to join with him. I had been playing DD for a long time, and while games of that were on offer, I really wanted to play some Call of Cthulhu, and I was extra happy when my friend wanted to join it with me. The GM for the game seemed like a pretty chill guy, and so did everyone else, so I was pretty happy with it overall. I didn't go into the game completely in the dark. I had wanted to play Call of Cthulhu for years, and had learned the system and everything. I had also spent plenty of time listening to the hilarious stories of famous characters, i.e. Old Man Henderson, Bonzi the Sad Clown, etc. I decided to try and make my own character who would out-crazy them all. His name was Herr Schnitzelnazi, and as you could have guessed, he's a Nazi. But despite what you're thinking, the guy was born in America, and was black. He went to college and became a doctor, and moved to Germany after medical school. Unfortunately for him, the Nazis got into power, and if you know your history, they weren't fond of black people. Because he couldn't really easily escape, he decided instead to change his name, relocate, and whiteface himself, so that he appeared white. If you get the reference, then I respect you. He changed his name to the most German thing that he could think of, which was Schnitzelnazi. By the time of the war's beginning, Herr Schnitzelnazi had risen to the rank of Hitler's private doctor. I should also clarify that to further protect himself, he decided to embrace all of the ideologies of the Nazis. Because of this, I was also able to justify that he received military training, and had one of those hilarious belt buckle guns that Hitler's private bodyguards had on, only he modified it so that it fired after he did a pelvic thrust. After the war, Herr Schnitzelnazi was captured by the Americans, and tried desperately to convince them that he was both black and American. Unfortunately for him, due to the fact that he had been undercover for so long, his accent was now irreversibly German, and the makeup he was using had permanently stained his skin white. As a result, his rather stupid American guards didn't believe him. He spent the next 10 years being experimented on, which made him completely insane as a result. He then very much began to believe in the ideologies of the Nazis, and completely forgot that he was black. After 10 years, he escaped in a lab fire and went to an old Nazi safe house in Germany. There, he acquired everything that he needed and what Hitler had given to him to protect. This included an entire arsenal of weapons, including Lugers, Sturmgewehr 44s, MG42s, an honest working Flammenwerfer, and boxes upon boxes of ammunition, stick grenades and landmines. He also has millions of dollars of Nazi gold, and even the original copy of the Mona Lisa. I joke that in this universe the Nazis had the real one, and the one in Paris is a fake. He returned to America after smuggling all his materials inside, and using an apartment as his staging ground. Herr Schnitzelnazi then used decades of time to prepare for the coming of the Fourth Reich. This included keeping the weapons in good condition, training, and keeping himself physically fit. He used his Nazi gold and his day job as a dog groomer to survive and collect more supplies. Just to make it all even funnier, he wears his Nazi SS uniform, which he never takes off for any reason. He's also an alcoholic, and learned to appreciate the wonders of weed. Over his years of stewing in his own madness, he's fully embraced the flat and hollow earth ideas. He has also developed rather major phobias of communists, the Battle of Kursk, pirates, books, and Spoon. And lastly, while he still embraces the Nazi ideology, he can no longer remember who he hates. So he has decided to blame all his hate and misfortunes on Vietnam and Scientology, despite never having any contact with either. When I brought this character to the session, I honestly thought they were going to make me roll up a new one. But I was pleasantly surprised when the DM told me that he was actually excited to see me roleplay this crazy fucker. But then I got a look at everyone else's characters, and that's when I realized that this was going to be the weirdest campaign I've ever played. The first character was a 9-year-old girl who worshipped mattresses, lived in a mall Sears for most of her life, and was a master at throwing knives. She also roleplayed the girl like a fucking psychopath. The next was a US senator named Dick Pfister. My thoughts to the character was roleplayed like the most stereotypical American patriotic senator you could imagine. Think McCarthy on steroid. Despises anything that isn't capitalism, calls his enemies commies, and uses a massive .44 Magnum shape to look like a bald eagle, which he named Freedom. After him was the president of the tabletop club. He role-played the only sane character in the group. He was an overzealous security guard who acted as Dick Fister's security. The only weird thing about him was his name, BJ Gobbledick. Next was the president's girlfriend, who was honest to god the funniest role player I've ever seen. She played the character Chuck the Lump. This guy was a redneck farmer with an axe and a double-barreled shotgun. He was also indescribably stupid. I could not describe to you how well she role-played his stupidity. It was so good. Lastly was my friend's character, and it was probably the weirdest, second only to mine. Remember Joseph Kony, the African warlord? Yeah, the guy role-played Joseph Kony in all his glory. He role-played him perfectly, and the GM allowed him to have what was probably the funniest ability I've ever seen. It was Summon Child Soldier. This allowed him to summon 1d8 child soldiers under his command, each with an AK-47. They were really weak, but could deal a good amount of damage, and were perfect for covering escapes and working as cannon fodder. This post is already pretty long, and explaining the full details of the adventures of this group would take way too long. If you guys are interested, comment below if you want to hear about our exploits, and I'll give you a highlights reel. So you guys want a highlight reel? Alright, sounds good to me. I have a few more stories, but I think that it's best to start at the very beginning, so let's do that. Our group was supposed to meet at a sort of commune in the vast forests of Montana. I honestly intended for us to start in a large city, hence my apartment filled with an ass ton of weapons. I felt as though it put a damper on my playstyle, but I decided to roll with the punches. I asked the GM if I could, instead of my apartment, keep my entire arsenal and personal wealth in my car instead. Him, being the cool guy he is, said sure. The car that I chose for Herr Schnitzelnazi was a Pinto cruising wagon, an absolutely hideous car that I felt fitted his character. I would also later learn that the car's major defect is that it would often explode on its own if it got into a crash, particularly if it was rear-ended. Anyways, while Connie was hitching a ride with a trucker to get to the commune, the 9-year-old girl Mackenzie was riding up in Chuck's rusty old pickup truck, and Senator Fister and Gobbledick were arriving by helicopter. I, in full SS attire, drove right up, keeping a Sturmgewehr, Luger, a single-stick grenade, and my trusty belt-buckle gun on me. "Welcome friends, I'm Director Nathan," said some guy dressed in a white jumpsuit who was waiting for us at the gates. I'm assuming we all arrived at the same time for dramatic timing. This guy starts telling us the history of this town. Something about how an environmentally aware company helped them set it up, and how this community was completely green and completely self-sufficient. My Nazi senses were immediately tingling and I didn't trust these guys. My character was insane and 92 at this point in his life, so I decided to start old maning the shit out of this. I start going on a classic old man rant, only I'm also talking about how I thought they were communist hippie Viet Cong. I threw a lot of Pepperidge Farm references in there as well, and started talking about the good old days of Nazi Germany. In game, everyone is just staring at me, until eventually the senator cuts me off. "Ignore this fascist fuck bucket," he says. "I'm looking help get the votes from your crowd, and I understand they love all of this useless hippie stuff." We all go on talking to Director Nathan for a while, till eventually he asks us to fix some power chip that's keeping the water purifier running, and how if we don't fix it then no more clean water. Insert Fallout joke there, and we head off. I have a high drive skill, which I justified by saying that I drove Hitler's staff car, but Gobbledick decides that he wants to drive instead. Me being crazy, I immediately whip out the grenade and immediately start accusing Gobbledick of being a Scientologist. They all freak out a little and they insist on confiscating the grenade. I half-heartedly agree, but promise that I will have it back. Out of game, Gobbledick turned to me and said, "Isn't this grenade like 70 years old?" I nod and he starts laughing. He told me that he's played with the GM before and he's the kind of guy who might make the grenade go off on his belt if he were in the mood. So, without anyone else knowing, he hands the grenade back to me. So after wrecking 2 of the jeeps we were supposed to take to the water plant, the GM says that we see a windowless white van pull up to us. Connie immediately puts Mackenzie out of view, because we were all thinking exactly the same thing. The driver seems like a normal guy and introduces himself as Phil. We tell him we need to get to the water purifier, but he just laughs and says that he fixed it this morning. He then invites us to go with him to take care of some compost at a plant that will pack it as fertilizer. Seeing nothing else to do, we go with him. The job basically required the stronger people in the party, which basically left everyone but me and Mackenzie. Mackenzie, being the little girl she is, says she holds the door, I on the other hand start feeling my Nazi senses tingling again, so I decide to investigate. I head outside of the plant, slipping away before anyone can notice me leaving. I start sneaking around the building, when suddenly I hear something just beyond the corner. I roll for a stealth check but just barely don't make it. The GM says that I hear a low growl and something scrapping along the wall just around the corner from me. I decide to go into battle mode. I pull the pin on my grenade and yell surprise cockbag. From the others' points of view they're just working away, when suddenly they hear a deafening explosion along the outside of the wall, which causes massive structural damage in the form of a huge dent, and in turn knocks over some of the heavy machinery, right onto poor Phil, who gets pinned under. While the others rush out guns drawn, I'm standing holding the pieces of what looked like a hairless rodent of unusual size by what's left of its tail. When the others get to me, I hold them up at Luger points and say I killed it. I get to eat it. After much arguing and debating, and ignoring poor Phil, we head back to the plant and notice that everyone is gone. Phil from under his machinery, and all of the other workers. Cars are all still there, but no people. All that's left was a mysterious green goo. Chuck decides that he wants to eat it, but fortunately Connie convinces him otherwise. After some debate we decide to go on a manhunt for the others, because apparently the others haven't seen a horror movie in their entire life. While we search the rest of the building, Connie decided that now was the time to use his once per day child soldier ability. He ordered them to patrol the farm fields just outside of the building and look for anything of note. Chuck, despite being a complete moron, is actually the only one of us with any experience around farming equipment, and proves to be of some use, particularly when we find a tractor in a barn not too far away. Just after we found it, we heard screaming in the fields, and gunfire as well, meaning that the kids clearly found something they didn't like. Gobbledygook wanted to go help them, or at least find out what's been doing this, but Senator Pfister, Connie and I all agree that they are just children. Strangely so did Mackenzie. We all get back in the van that we took here, and Mackenzie hotwires it. This time I drive and we head back to the commune. We get about halfway there before meeting with some other guys in white jumpsuits. Only they're also wearing bulletproof vests and carrying assault rifles. So we stop the car and I roll down the window to speak to them. "Well, hi there sugar, what brings you all out here this time of night baby?" I say, in my best Southern Belle voice. I have absolutely no idea why I did this. I think I just thought that it was something ridiculous and in character. If you're having a hard time imagining this, just imagine an ancient man wearing a Nazi SS uniform talking like that. After some more talking, the guards eventually agree to escort us back to the compound, because we insist on speaking to the director after seeing what we saw. We get back, and this time find an entirely new guy waiting for us, and now the guards are calling him Director Scott. Where the fuck is the last man? Connie asked. I thought Mr. Nathan was the director. I'd like to stop and say that my friend as Connie had spent a year in Uganda helping out people there. Because of that, he was doing a near flawless Ugandan accent with everything. Director Scott informs us that there never was a Director Nathan. The only Nathan in the commune is a sanitation worker. Senator Pfister starts going on about how sneaky poor people after that. We're all left really confused at this point, because we mentioned Director Nathan to Phil back when he was alive and he seemed to be totally aware of Director Nathan. We would have questioned this further, but we liked Director Scott, so we didn't give a shit. By this point, it was around 10 at night. Director Scott tells us that we should be getting to sleep, and then gives us a cryptic warning about how we should, under no circumstances, go outside at night. Bit unnerved further, we decide to head over to where we'd be living, with us each piling in mine and Chuck's cars to get there. Our living quarters was an honest-to-God log cabin. Only by log cabin, it was massive, 2 stories, and more than enough room for all of us to live there. I want to unpack all of my stuff into the cabin, but when I go to the door to try and open it to get to my car, I notice that a sort of electronic lock has been activated, preventing me from opening the thick door. I try my key but it doesn't work either. We all wanted to give a shit, but none of us really could. I decide to sleep on the couch in the living room for the night while the others turn in. I don't really know why I did it. I think I just wanted someone to survive in case the rooms were wired with explosives or killer robots or Shoggoth or something. The GM tells me that we all wake up at around 2 AM to a really loud and obnoxious sound that seems to be coming from the entry hallway. I, being the closest, and investigate. It's the electric door lock. It suddenly unlocked itself. Before I can really do anything, the GM tells Gobbledygook who's sleeping on the second floor right next to Senator Pfister, that he hears slow and steady walking along the roof of his house, right above his room, and it's slowly headed for his window, which also has had its electric lock disabled. Without hesitation he gets out his gun and points it at the window. He sees the silhouette of a vaguely humanoid figure covered in spikes crawling down the wall, looking in through the window, reaching a clawed hand to open it. 3 shots each hitting the fucker later. It falls a full story down as dead as can be. We all hear the gunshots at this point. I grab my trusty Sturmgewehr 44 and Connie his FN foul. Mackenzie grabs a throwing knives and Chuck his shotgun and axe. Meanwhile, Senator Pfister is busy pushing his furniture up against his window and door. The GM says that we can hear inhuman screaming from all around her. Dozens of separate voices. It's at this moment when I wish that I had been able to unpack my car. Everyone rushes into the living room. Chuck, Connie and Gobbledick are all barricading entrances, while Mackenzie had somehow used her superb climbing skill to climb to the top of the chandelier hanging over the middle of the room. I on the other hand went to the bar and started downing a fifth of whiskey. If I was going to die it wouldn't be sober. The living room of this cottage was quite large, and the back wall has almost entirely a single window, which overlooked a lake, about 200 feet away from us. This will come up later. To make a long battle short, the fuckers came at us from every direction and we kept on gunning them down. After each of losing probably half of our hit points a person, and with over a dozen of the fuckers dead, we finally felt as though we had won. I immediately took this opportunity and ran to my car. I threw open the trunk door and grabbed a Panzerschreck, a few rockets and one of my stick grenade boxes. Herr Schnitzelnazi always carries around at least 1,000 rounds of ammo with him, so I was fine on that front. While I was doing this, shit was going down in the cabin. The others noticed a massive, monstrous being that had started coming out of the lake. Something so strange that you had to roll a sanity check just to keep from going mad when you saw it. Most everyone passed the check, except for poor Chuck and Senator Pfister, who had rejoined the group. I just got back when this thing came out. Chuck and Senator Pfister immediately started walking towards it as if they were in a trance. Desperate to protect his senator, Gobbledick restrained him from walking to the beast in the lake. Unfortunately for Chuck, no one was strong enough to stop him from getting there, so I decided to do the next best thing. Suicide bomber mode. Gobbledick had knocked Senator Pfister unconscious, and while the rest of the party was doing everything they could to stall Chuck, I grabbed some twin, which the GM said I had hundreds of feet of in the kitchen. Why? I have no idea. I tied the twin to the ends of each of the grenades, and started placing them everywhere on Chuck. When he had about 20 grenades tied to him, we let him walk to the beast at the edge of the lake. I kept the ends just loose enough so that I wouldn't pull the pins early, but just taut enough so that I could pull them with ease. Just when Chuck reached the creature and it got close enough to him, I pulled back the string. I could not have wished for a bigger explosion. Chuck blew up right next to the thing and practically half of the fucker was gone. The GM said that it wasn't dead yet though, and it was sort of pathetically trying to slink its way back into the water. Without hesitation, I loaded my Panzerschreck and blew the fucker to pieces, but not before saying you're the ugliest fucking trout I've ever seen. For whatever it could do, it couldn't survive getting hit with an anti-tank weapon. That concluded our first session. Of the other big tales, which I will tell another time, there are the following: the pig roast, the incident with the boats, the toilet hand, fire and blood, and the grand finale killing the gods. Write in the comment which one you'd like told first. This story took place probably about 4 gaming sessions deep into our campaign. By this point we had discovered that the commune was run by an insidious cult who had been luring people to it for the past 20 years in order to either brainwash them to join its ranks, or turn them into what they called the Brethren. We had plenty of experience with the Brethren though. We killed almost 24 of them at our cabin. Basically, the cult thought that at that point we had seen too much too early, so they decided brainwashing us was a lost cause. So they just decided to let the Brethren eat us. At this point though, it still left us wondering what that thing in the lake was. Emphasis on was, thanks to Herr Schnitzelnazi. After the battle at our cabin, we sensed something was wrong with the commune immediately. Nazi senses were tingling once again you could say. We were all worried, so we decided to play a hunch and have Mackenzie sneak into what was essentially the commune's prison, so that she could talk to the people that were held prisoner there. Now you might be asking why we'd trust a 9-year-old with this mission, and it was simultaneously because she was the stealthiest and we all didn't give a shit. Mackenzie found all of this information out from the prisoner, namely Phil, who she found in one of the cells. Phil was already in the process of transforming into one of the brethren, but with what little sanity he had left, he told Mackenzie everything. He also begged her to kill him, which she did. Now, when I said that she did it, I mean that she did it immediately. Right after he said the words, her knife was out and in his throat. No hesitation or anything. To make things even more psychopathic, she then went on a killing rampage in the prison, killing all the inmates to prevent them from being turned. Some of them were quite thankful for it, yes, but we also learned from the GM that some of the people she killed had absolutely no idea about what happens with the commune, and were only in there for minor infractions. Mackenzie really didn't care when she found out metagame style either. So, after we found this out, we decided to make a break for it, because we knew they'd try to finish the job. Insert one session of us basically setting as many buildings on fire as we could to distract them, and we made our escape in Chuck's old truck, and my Pinto cruising wagon. And, also as a middle finger, I set up every single landmine that I had along the only entrance and exit from the main area of the commune. So, to make a long story short, we eventually found a summer camp that was kinda like a co-ed version of the Boy Scouts. The camp counselors didn't like us being there, but one intimidate check from Connie and I later and they basically gave us full control of the camp. The president of the club's girlfriend, the one who played Chuck earlier, also ended up playing as Buddy, one of the camp counselors. He was a big dude with a full thick and bushy survivalist's beard, and a demeanor that reminded me of someone who was stoned off their ass. Only it was all the time, so that basically brings you up to speed. By this point we knew that we couldn't stay at this camp for long, partially because it was on the other side of the lake from the cultist commune, so we could literally see where we once were. The beginning of the session really consisted of us trying to come up with a plan of action for our characters, how we could uncover more information and how we could stop whatever the cult was planning, all while the eldritch horrors had been harassing us and the kids. Don't worry too much about the kids though. Connie made sure to start training them as fervently loyal child soldiers so we were better protected. We got our first lead the second night we stayed at the camp. I should clarify that this wasn't like a campsite or anything where everything was set up when they got here. It was like a camp that had been built years ago, and had clearly been running for years. This meant structures like cabins, a mess hall, medical center, ranges, places to earn various merit badges, and of course the bathrooms. I believe that it was Senator Pfister who decided to go to the bathroom, with Gobbledick waiting outside for him. I decided that my character also had to use the bathroom, so I went in there as well. Unfortunately, there were only toilets and no urinal. Herr Schnitzelnazi refused to use toilets if he only had to pee, so instead he went to piss in the sink. I think it was when I heard screaming coming from one of the toilets that we first realized that something weird was happening. Before I could even react, Gobbledick threw the door open, and then kicked in the stall door of Senator Dick Pfister's bathroom stall and tackling him. Mid-shit. Nothing was happening to him however, because the screaming was coming from one of the younger children who was in the stall next to Senator Pfister. While Pfister was cursing out his security guard, I kicked open the other stall only to watch what was left of the kid being dragged down the tiny hole of the toilet, leaving a bloody mess there. 3 sanity checks passed later and we were ready to act. We knew that the kid had to be dead. He was already small, even for his age, but to pull a kid through the hole meant that a couple of things needed to have been bent and broken. Before we could tell the others, another unnaturally long hand shot out of the toilet and grabbed Gobbledick by the throat, using immense strength to pull him headfirst into the toilet. That got us into a game of tug of war with Gobbledick's body, which we were rapidly losing. It was all we could do just to keep his head out of the water. When it became apparent that we were going to lose, I pulled out a combat knife that I kept on me and slashed away at the arm. Now Herr Schnitzelnazi, as a 92-year-old man, is weak as fuck. But he still did enough damage for the toilet hand to decide that it wasn't worth it, so it slunk back into the toilet. We ran out of there to tell the others, and we decided that this would be our best lead. But how could we follow the toilet hand? After stealing a uniform from a camper, I took out a hyper-realistic blow-up doll that I had in my cruising wagon and put the uniform her. I made out with my blow-up doll Helga one last time, before strapping half a cart of grenades to her, and rigging the pins to be pulled when she got about halfway down the toilet. I think the GM was getting tired of my car of crazy at that point right there. Half the toilets blew up, and we heard a high-pitched monstrous scream come from inside. When we went in to survey the damage, we found that there was actually a massive gaping hole that led to the underground underneath the toilet. Buddy the camp counselor decided that he wanted to take point, and pulled out a .44 Magnum and a flashlight and jumped down the hole. Apparently he had the Magnum in case of bear attacks. We all followed him and found that this hole was a recently carved, imagine cave, that sort of snaked along for miles. That was basically what we were dealing with. Now, Herr Schnitzelnazi was coming prepared this time. Now I had 5 grenades on me, and a Flammenwerfer all with me. Figured the MG42 was too big and heavy for my feeble old man to carry on his own. We went on for a long while, with the cave kind of going on a downward angle. We also noticed things starting to get really wet, so we figured that we were underneath the lake at this point. Eventually we came across a massive cistern, complete with stonework and statues of monstrous beings, but nobody was around. We saw writing along the walls, written in some sort of ancient alien language, that we didn't bother taking a tracing of or anything. Figured it wasn't worth much. The cistern had about 7 other paths snaking off in all different directions, so we spent the next 5 minutes trying to decide where to go next. That's when the Shoggoth came. I'm assuming the Shoggoth was the toilet hand here. It just sort of rose out of a massive basin filled with water, tentacles everywhere, like a Japanese hentai. To make matters worse, about half a dozen of the brethren came to help it in combat. Gobbledygook and Mackenzie were both dragged off to die during the fight, and Connie used his summon child soldier ability again, which did help. I was desperately using my Flammenwerfer on the Shoggoth, but every time I caught part of it on fire, it would just move that back into the water and extinguish it, not really dealing much damage. I knew that we needed something big to kill the Shoggoth, and every time we killed enough of the brethren to focus fire on the fucker, more would just come. GM, you are a sadistic bastard. I ran up the stairs to the 3rd level, where I noticed a particularly large stone statue of what I think was the monstrous creature we saw come out of the lake that first game. Deciding it was big enough, I went right for it. I think the GM didn't want me to have it be quite so easy, so he had one of the brethren crawl its way right along the wall right towards me. Herr Schnitzelnazi just shouted at the thing, "Spider-Man, is that really you?" as if he were a starstruck fanboy. Needless to say, the brethren was not amused and tackled me. Unfortunately for it, I humped a couple of shots into it from my belt buckle gun. Bet you forgot about that into where I think its dick used to be. With that out of the way, I went up behind the statue and started dousing it in flame. Now, stone doesn't burn, but fire does weaken its structure, and because the Nazis were just oh so smart as to put tar into the mix of their flamethrowers, so that the flames stick to whatever they hit, the fire was all around the statue. That's when I rolled to throw all of my grenades at the statue, and have them get caught right behind it and the wall. It should blow it straight off. One critical success later, and the statue went off just as planned. It actually fell before I could throw all my grenades, leaving me with one left again. I don't think I could have asked for a better shot. The statue landed right on top of the Shoggoth, and it just went squish. The rest of the brethren were easy enough to clean up after that, and we were left with just the senator, Connie, Buddy and myself. We weren't quite done with the session though. The remainder of us decided to go down the path which was the only one made of stone. Do you remember those scenes in Harry Potter where they're in the Ministry of Magic? With those black stone blocks? That was essentially what the tunnel was made of. After a few hundred feet of walking, we came to a large room which looked like an old study. There were shelves upon shelves of ancient looking books, and a single large desk in the middle of the room, with papers and drawings of occult symbols and rituals all over it. Without hesitation, Buddy the camp counselor pulled out a massive bag of weed. Connie, Buddy and I all took pieces of paper from the desk and rolled them into joints, which we all started smoking. Senator Pfister, however, refused to have any of the devil's cabbage. After getting stoned off of some good herb, we all began to stupidly look around at some of the books. As we were doing that, a group of some of the cultists from the commune came down to try and find out what all the noise down here was. Buddy, Connie, Senator Pfister and Connie's one remaining child soldier heard them coming and all readied themselves to fire down the hallway. Herr Schnitzelnazi on the other hand was way too baked and decided that reading was better worth his time. What the fuck do all these words mean, you cocksuckers? I asked, before reading a mangled version of one of the summoning rituals. When I did this, I accidentally summoned an eldritch demon of some sorts, which manifested before us, right out of the smoke from the weed. I almost forgot to mention, there was so much smoke from the pot that the entire hallway was basically covered in the stuff, drastically reducing visibility. It was damned convenient for us. because my demon just ran straight down the hallway and all we heard at the other end were a few gunshots and scream. When it was all cleared, we found the remains of what I think were at 1.5 separate people. Difference was that they had been spread. In celebration for a job well done, Connie and Fister decided to take some of the books with us, while Buddy and I lit up again. This also caused me to inadvertently set the study on fire. Damned convenient once again. And thus concludes the toilet hand. Coming up next in the adventures of Herr Schnitzelnazi is Fire and Blood. Will we succeed? Find out in the next exciting post.
Oh fucking lord, if Herr Schnitz isn't Excel from the Discord, I don't know what is. Like seriously, we all joke about Excel being some form of like AI designed by Paul, but maybe he's her instead. Like the similarities are just uncanny. And like, if you don't know what I'm on about, definitely go ahead, check out the Discord, links down below, all that shit. But I do warn you, we do have a non-weeb and furry policy. If you've got that as your profile picture, if your name sounds like that, you will not make a passport patrol. I guarantee you. So if you want to join, just don't have that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you have to integrate into our little kingdom, you know? But no, that's definitely something to check out. Also, me and my girlfriend are working on something, a bit of a video series over on her channel. It's going to be mostly based around the Discord. Honestly, I love the Discord. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's possibly, for me, it's like, you know, the second best thing about being able to make YouTube videos. I just really enjoy my Discord. So like, you know, it's something to check out, and we're working on something now. It's going to be a wee bit before it's actually going to be posted, like, you know, before we actually get videos rolling out. But once it's started, it should be like, you know, it's hard to get the ball rolling, you know what I mean? So look, give us a week or so, subscribe if you want to know what it's all about, and also check out the Discord, definitely, to get a lot of the reference, but I think it's still going to be funny, no matter what. But no, I love this one. So did I see that Connie 2012? Fuck me, I thought that was hers. I was fucking in hysterics while reading that the first time. I thought that was fucking outstanding. The only thing I don't like about this story is we didn't get enough of him. Like, I just wanted more of him, to be honest. I would have fucking loved that. But no, I've cut this up into 2 parts, so I've got a lot of it already edited, but I felt like this would be a good point to, you know, actually cut it. So look, if you want to see part 2, it's going to be posted tomorrow. I definitely recommend you subscribing to keep up to speed and all that other good stuff. And links down below, you know what I'm going to say. Like, check it out. You might just like it if you enjoyed it so far.
If you haven't already, check out my Redbubble portfolio. You might just find something you like.
Just stop. Just stop it. Stop. No, just stop it. It's time to stop. It's time to stop, okay? No more. Where the fuck are your parents? Who are your parents? I'm gonna call Child Protective Services. It's time to stop.